we have the meds. Hey folks, welcome to a podcast about Catholic things. This is Eric, the Ambassador of Common Sense, and I'm here with
Dan, the Ambassador of Nonsense. Welcome, everyone.
And last week we did our first apologetic podcast, and we addressed a couple subjects that you would hear on things like Catholic Answers and all the EWTN stations. And let's face it, you hear it over and over again, and you hear the same answers over and over again. We tried to go a little bit deeper than that. And then what you didn't hear is that we also addressed the subject of prayer to the saints. And I wasn't at all happy to it. We kind of floundered a little bit.
We rambled it, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't like
so we're going to
an
give that
answer
one a
out
deep
there
dive.
that's not good.
Yeah.
If it doesn't make sense to me, then I'm not going to say it. So I cut that out, and we're going to try that again this week. So with prayers to the saints, there's kind of three subjects. First of all, there's, quote, summoning the dead, which is forbidden in the Old Testament, and it is forbidden by Catholic law. By Catholic teaching.
Use of mediums and practices of necromancy and stuff like that.
Yeah. Second of all, there's prayer to a saint instead of God. So Protestants will often equate
the idea
that
of
to
intercession.
worshiping saints.
Yeah, right. The idea that if the oft repeated phrase is that Christ is the one mediator. Well, if that's the case, then we should never be going to anyone else for prayer other than Christ himself. We should never invoke the intercession of anybody other than Christ, according to the Protestant mindset.
Yeah.
So that's the second thing.
And then this kind of cancels the other one out. This is graven images, because we have pictures of saints, and often we will pray at a statue or at a picture of a saint. Now, if you believe that we're worshiping them, then it is a graven image. If we're not worshiping them, it doesn't really matter, you know?
Right.
It's
way,
only a graven image if you're worshiping it.
Quick side note: Have you ever seen Patrick Madrid speak?
Have I seen Patrick Madrid?
You know who Patrick Madrid is?
I know Catholic, who he is. Yeah,
speaker. Okay, yeah, very strong about biblical and that kind of stuff. Anyway, my wife and I were watching him speak. He was in Indianapolis. This was years ago, and this was a long time ago. But anyway, we went to see him speak, and he was just talking about an episode where he was with a buddy, and they passed a Lourdes grotto that had the Blessed Mother and the children on their knees praying the Rosary in front of the Blessed Mother. He said, "Isn't Catholicism great? Not only do we pray to statues, but we have statues that pray to statues."
That's good.
Anyway, whenever we talk about praying to statues, I think of that.
Hold on. So summoning the dead.
What do you want to deal with first?
Summoning the dead.
Necromancy.
I can kind of see. I can see the logic, and a lot of times, if you bring this up to a Catholic, they will say things like, "We're not praying to the saints; we're praying through the saints. We're talking to God through the saints, or maybe we're worshiping through the saints. We're not specifically praying to them." And I don't buy that, because, today I lost my Allen wrench, and the whole time I'm walking around going, Tony, look around. And I was talking specifically to St. Anthony, asking him to help me find a wrench.
Yeah, kind of giving those excuses you said, it grants too much to the Protestant argument.
Mm-hmm.
No, we talk to saints, and we consider them right there with us that we can talk to. Now, it's in a sense, it's through God that our communication to the saints occur, because it's by the grace of God and by the fact that we are one in Jesus Christ, who is the one mediator, that we're able to talk to the saints, that we're able to communicate to them, as though they were right here, visibly in front of us.
So it's not like we're talking to God through the saints. We're talking to the saints through God. That would be more accurate.
In a sense. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And the thing is, even in the modern community of saints that allows us to do that, and that allows us to do it with so much ease, that's not entirely missing from the Old Testament either. In the Old Testament, first of all, we see a few cases where the prayers to the dead or the invocation of the dead are commended. Now, here's the problem for Protestants. The various books that have those, and I'm talking about books like Baruch, books like Maccabees.
Yeah.
Well, the Protestants kind of ripped those out of their Bible. And here's the thing. They ripped them out of the Bible because of their support for those things that the Protestants no longer wanted to support.
Yeah.
So it's like they had the Bible that had been, the same Bible for hundreds of years, and had been long established as part of the canon and accepted by the entire Universal Church as both inspired and canonical. But then they come up with their heretical doctrines, and they see those doctrines contradicted in these books of the Bible, and so they say, oh, you know what? That's not part of our Bible. Now, it wasn't quite that simplistic, but it was almost that simplistic in historically in terms of how it happened.
It did. Yeah, it did happen. So the result is that when you want to find an Old Testament verse for the sake of this argument, it's not there. So we have to argue at it from a different direction.
However,
but
there's still
still possible.
There's still some more Old Testament stuff, though, because, for example, we see in Jeremiah that God himself tells Jeremiah that Moses and Samuel were interceding before him on behalf of the Israelites. And, God basically said, look, even though Moses and Samuel have been here praying for you guys, because they're with him, not quite with, they don't have the beatific vision yet, but even though they've been here praying to me for you guys, Israel has gone so bad that I have to chastise them, and that whole thing. And
so
in Tobit,
Jeremiah 15,
15:1, yeah, so right at the beginning of 15.
Okay, well, let's read that real quick. Then the Lord said to me, even if Moses and Samuel were to stand before me, my heart would not go out to this people.
That's not how because the one I read, a little bit different than that, even though Moses and Samuel do stand before me.
Yeah, let's get
I had read it.
Let's get a good Bible. Thank on it.
Yeah, it depends on the Bible, I suppose.
Hold on.
So I've got the Revised Standard Version Catholic Edition. Then the Lord, which is considered to be, I think, the most scholarly modern English Catholic edition. Like for study, not just inspirational reading. And it has it. Then the Lord said to me, though Moses and Samuel stood before me, yet my heart would not turn towards this people. Send them out of my sight and let them go. But that's not all.
Okay.
Because we also have Tobit. Let me see if I can find Tobit in here.
Did they accept? They don't like Tobit, do they?
Is Tobit one of the ones that they ripped out?
Yeah. Okay. Because it's not in this King James version.
Okay. Well, that's another one that they tore out because it shows things that the Protestants don't like to admit. Right. But basically, Raphael says that he carries the prayers of the saints to God.
So there is some kind of interaction, and at this time, I mean, well, I don't know. What are all of the dead? Which we have to get into this in a minute. But are there any? Is there anyone in heaven throughout the Old Testament?
There's no one in heaven, but there's no one in heaven in the sense of the beatific vision.
Okay.
Because before the death of Christ on the cross, nobody could enter into the beatific vision.
Okay.
Now, let me ask you this. So, Daniel's one that the Protestants accept, right?
Parts of it. Parts
of Daniel? Really? Like they got rid of... Did they get rid of the prayer of the young men in the furnace? Or they probably renumber the chapters, don't they?
Yeah. So, if we looked at...
So, what is chapter... Go to chapter 3 starting at verse 28. What is that for the Protestants?
What's the point?
You said, is there anyone in heaven in the Old Testament during the time of the Old Testament? The answer is no. Briefly, nobody could enter into the beatific vision until Christ died on the cross. However, there is actually a Old Testament concept of sainthood. Sort of, kind of. It refers to some people when they die as being asleep with their fathers rather than just merely dead. And then other people as being dead. There's a distinction made.
And that would be different than in the bosom of Abraham?
Well, asleep with his fathers is what Jesus later refers to as the bosom of Abraham. That's my point, is the Old Testament already recognizes and establishes a concept of a differentiation of the position of dead people.
The souls who have died, before Jesus, there's only two places you could go. You could go to hell, or you could go to the bosom of Abraham.
Abraham, which we often refer to as Sheol. Yeah.
Asleep with the fathers.
Asleep with their fathers, bosom of Abraham, Sheol. We modernly call it the limbo of the patriarchs.
Okay.
So, but even the Old Testament is making that distinction.
They are
That's
dead,
my point.
But they're not necessarily active. I mean, we've got a couple instances where they're kind of mentioned, and depending on the language, could be said to have been in some sort of communication with. But it's not just that, because Jesus, while he's on earth, and these souls are still in the bosom of Abraham, and yet what does Jesus do? Jesus is talking to them.
Yeah. They appear to Jesus, Elijah and Moses, wasn't it?
And I thought... you
know what's funny is, how did Peter recognize Elijah and Moses?
Yeah, he knew who all of them were.
And Jesus even says, Jesus uses this to refute the Sadducees. He said, I forget who he referred, but somebody refers to God as the God of Abraham and the God of Moses. And Jesus said, God is the Father is the God of the living, not of the dead. Therefore, Abraham and Moses are living. And so he even makes that point directly. So
even before the resurrection, we know that they are alive. However, there are these verses that forbid men to summons them or talk to them. But I will say that these verses necromancy. Are always linked to sorcery and magic.
Yeah.
Every time that it's mentioned, it's linked to magic.
It never forbids any of these things in a way that isn't linked to magic. That's the thing. And in fact, what's even more interesting is that rather than forbidding the action, although, I mean, the action is clearly forbidden, the Israelites are not supposed to become mediums or necromancers and so forth, but the actual command is to not have any dealings with mediums. Don't use mediums or necromancers, and don't summon the dead as a way of trying to find out the future and stuff like that. It's always, the prohibition is always linked to magic. Even
in that time before the resurrection, I would imagine that if you're I don't know, you've been married for 20 years, your wife dies, and you're trying to get along in the world after that, and one day you sit down at her grave and begin talking to her. You're not breaking the commandment right then.
Right. Exactly. That's the point. In fact, I mean, most of these had to do with trying to summon, and especially summoning for the purpose of gaining hidden knowledge and stuff like that.
There's always personal gain there, and it's always sinister, or at least that.
Right.
Whenever the Bible talks about someone who does it, it's always sinister. For example, what's his name? Saul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, summoned Samuel using the Witch of Endor.
He summoned Sam. Did he use a medium?
Yeah, the Witch of Endor. He actually disguised himself to go see her.
Okay, so he goes and sees her.
So she summons Samuel, who raises up out of the ground. Not his body, but his spirit comes up out of the ground, and his spirit says, "Why have you summoned me? God already said that He's displeased with you and He's going to replace you, and that you're going to die along with your sons."
You got to wonder, was he like fooling himself into thinking I could magically get out of this, or did he not believe in God?
No, it's that he was being embattled. I mean, that his enemies were defeating him, and he was scared about the next battle, and God wasn't talking to him. I mean, look, if you read David, during David's kingship, David would go to the Lord and ask him things, and God would just talk back to him. They would say, "Hey,
wouldn't that be cool?
I know. Should I do battle against these Philistines?
Am I going to
win?" And God would say, "Yeah, go do battle. I'll deliver them into your hand.
Go beat their butts."
That's right. But God had stopped talking to Saul, and even I think all along, I think God had mostly spoken to Saul through Samuel. But Saul could get no indication from God what he was supposed to do. Of course, Samuel had already told Saul, "You're done as a king."
And he's not looking. He's not looking to please God. He's looking to protect himself,
save himself. Right? Exactly. That's what he wanted. And so,
which is not what Catholics do. Well, not what we're supposed to do.
Well, I mean, sometimes we do, but I guess, like when we pray to Saint Anthony, it's like, I really want this.
Just tell me. I never did find the Allen wrench. It's gone.
Yeah, okay. That's
my metric set is now incomplete. I have to buy another one.
There's always that. I mean, we pray to the saints, but our sense is that we glorify them by doing so, and not glorify them in themselves, but glorify their exceptional and exemplary life of virtue and closeness to God.
Right.
So we ask certain saints for certain favors, and we do so almost non-thinkingly sometimes. That it's just kind of rolls off of our tongues a lot of times. But even in that, it's just because it's so heavily imbued us that the saints are the ones that we need to stay close to and rely on things, because we need to emulate them, because we need to grow close to God the way they were close to God in their earthly life, and we need to emulate the virtues the way they did. It's that kind of thing.
If you don't grow up praying to the saints, or even if you're kind of a new Catholic, it's probably not that ingrained in you.
Probably feels weird.
It's like,
it's a
I'm
thing
talking
you
to
do
someone
when you
who's
do
not here, but we really think of them as hearing us by the grace of God and helping us by the grace of God and for the grace of God. It's it's almost like asking a big brother or something like that. It's just one of the things you do throughout your day and stuff. Now, okay, we've got instances of Jesus talking to the dead. And like you said, Peter, for some reason, said, "Hey, it's Moses and Elijah." As if he knew who they were. But what's even stranger than that is, okay, Jesus dies. Now, before we get to the big point here, when Jesus is on the cross, he says to another man who's hanging there with him, who's alive at the time, "On this day, you will be with me in paradise. Sorry.
That's true.
Knock it off. So there is definitely going to be people in heaven from the time Christ dies, not even raises yet. He says on this day.
Yeah, in fact, that's the understanding of descending into hell. Because he was ushering the patriarchs into heaven before he even came back and rose from the dead.
Yeah, so it's not even that nobody can go until he goes, because he doesn't ascend till later, but when he looks up and says it is finished, it really is finished.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think afterwards we talk about his resurrected body. It's in a glorified state and that kind of stuff. His body is resurrected, and then he in his body doesn't ascend into heaven until some days later. But I think that he then, even as he's walking around talking to the apostles and teaching them how things are going to go, his human soul is now experiencing the beatific vision. He's basically in heaven even while he's walking around on earth.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's, and that's, that's why others can go to heaven as well, even before he rises from the dead, because he's, once he dies, he descends into hell, leads the patriarchs into heaven, and then now, when he rises from the dead, his human soul is in the beatific vision.
Now he's in the bosom of Abraham.
There's the others
leading people out, and all of a sudden, all these dead people are walking around.
Yeah, I was going to say there's the people who rose from their graves and went and talked to their families and stuff.
You get the feeling that some of these people are like generations away. Not like my dad who died, but
it's like your great-great-grandpa who died or something like that.
Yeah, and I don't know. Again, suddenly everybody knows who they are or something.
Same way Peter knew who Moses was.
I don't know if it's because they told them, but either way, they were walking around and talking to people, and people talked to them. Those people would not be guilty of summoning the dead.
Right.
It's
that's
just a different thing.
I think that's part of the. There's a few different meanings to attach to it, but I think that's part of the meaning of the rending of the curtain in front of the tabernacle in the Holy of Holies of the temple. Because before it was only the Levites, the tribe of priests, who could go into the Holy of Holies, offer the sacrifice before the Ark of the Covenant wasn't in the temple anymore by that time, but when the temple was first built, that's where Solomon placed the Ark. Of course, that temple was destroyed. The one at Jesus' time was built by Herod. But only the Levites could go in there, could enter there and offer sacrifice. And I think that part of the significance of the rending of the curtain was to also rend the various divisions. I mean, we still have priests who are ordained as priests, but they don't have to belong to a particular tribe. And in terms of our ability to maintain a communion with each other in Christ, the separations are gone. Now we're all one body in Christ, as St. Paul says.
Right.
And that's why we can all rely on each other and call on each other and ask each other to pray.
Which brings us to the communion of the saints, and it's a huge part of Catholic belief, because it's not just that we believe it, but as I was saying earlier, it becomes part of our everyday life. It's not just an academic practice.
It's a way of life.
It's practical. Pray to Mary, pray to St. Anthony, pray to, even people who haven't quite been canonized.
Yeah, we develop local cults of holy people. I mean, we might pray to, I don't know if you remember Brother Joe, for example.
Brother Joe.
We might pray to Brother Joe.
It wouldn't be wrong, first of all. Second of all, it wouldn't really be, it's definitely not useless either.
Yeah. It's efficacious.
They are still humans, and the same way it's good for us to pray for each other, and it's good for us to ask each other for help.
Right. And, St. Paul even says that the saints, as when we die and enter the vision of God, we become like angels. One of the things in the book of Revelation is a couple of different scenes where angels are using censers, and the incense is going up, and it is the prayers of the faithful going up to God. So when the spirits in heaven are taking the prayers of the faithful and delivering them up to God, that's like a pleasing scent to God. God wants that kind of intercessory prayer going on all the time. Right. And if when we die and see God, we become like angels, that means we also participate in that work of carrying the prayers of those on earth up to God. That's part of what we do.
If you think about it, I mean, he wants the same thing for the living. He didn't tell us, well, go believe in the gospel and go pray and do your little penances and kind of keep to yourself. More than just praying for each other, we're supposed to be helping each other and doing good to each other and living as examples of charity. Your whole life should be part of your life. It doesn't stop when you die. It's pleasing to him when you're alive. It's pleasing to him when you're dead. When you're
right. And in fact, that's one of the things that if, to go back to the Protestant argument that Jesus is the one mediator, to take that to take it out of context and then use it in the way that Protestants use it to criticize Catholic prayer to the saints, you would also have to criticize any request from one person to another that they pray for them.
Right.
If the reason you can't do that is because Christ is the one mediator, then you can't even ask your brother to pray for you or your neighbor or anything.
And you certainly have no need of a pastor.
Well, right. But what's interesting is that the very passage where St. Paul says that, brings out this one mediator idea, it's in a context where St. Paul is saying we have to pray for everybody. We have to all be part of one body praying for each other because Christ is the one mediator. But we are the body of Christ. And so we have a communion in Christ. And so for Christ to be the one mediator also means for us to mediate on each other's behalf.
It's one of those things, there's a lot of Protestant arguments that it's like, okay, you very obviously took one tiny phrase and turned it into almost a whole religion just built around that phrase. But prayer to the saints is one that it's not quite as easily knocked down as that. You do have to think about this and once you've done the work of thinking it out, okay, it's a lot easier to swallow. But it's one of, like their argument against the Eucharist, to me, is just silly. I mean, he spelled it out for us so plainly and simply. But we do have these passages in the Bible that say, don't talk to the dead. And then here we are talking to the saints.
Except it doesn't really say don't
it's more than a one or two word argument. You have to look at it and you have to really think about it.
You have to think about what the prohibition really means. I mean, the Bible has a prohibition against graven images. In fact, Aaron is in big trouble for making a calf, and a bunch of the people of Israel die because they worship the calf. But after God delivered the 10 Commandments, including the thing about graven images, he instructs Moses on how to make the Ark of the Covenant. And on it are
two
angels. Images. Yeah, two cherubs with their wings, facing each other or something like that. And God says, I'm going to speak to you from between these two cherubim. And then later when Solomon builds the temple, he put in the central, holy space, he creates two great big statues of cherubs with wingspans that like touch the walls and stuff like that. And then separately, he creates a throne. Oh, in the temple, he also creates this big, they call it a molten sea. I'm not even sure what it was, like whether it was a great big, like bath kind of a thing or what. But anyway, there are like these oxen that he creates under it out of gold. And then when he creates the throne, he has like a calf's head at the top of the throne and these lions on the various steps leading up to the throne and stuff like that. I mean, all of these things. And after he does all these things, God rewards him and says, God says, hey, I approve of this work that you've done, building me a house to my name and building the right. house for your kingship and so on and so forth. This is all good by God. And yet we've got this, commandment, don't make graven image. Well, okay, well, obviously that commandment means something a little bit different than what you might think is this very strict, you can never make something that is a likeness of something else.
Now, if we, okay.
And then you apply that same analogy to the things like the, okay, there's rules against using mediums and necromancers and that kind of stuff. But like you said, every single prohibition uses, it actually prohibits a practice that involves magic, which is not even close to the same thing as prayer.
On the subject of graven images, and I don't know how, because we may have laid out a convincing argument. That doesn't mean don't build statues or paint pictures of the saints. It does, however, mean don't paint pictures of God.
Okay.
Now, a couple things about that. You notice that every time
and call them God,
right?
Because I think would have been more to the point.
Every if you look throughout history, generally the idols that we're talking about were always of things or people who didn't exist. For example, the Pachamama statues.
Oh, right. Yeah.
There's no Pachamama.
That's true.
He brought
there is no Pachamama.
A false idol.
It was something made up. Yeah.
The Vatican.
Well, and that's what the demons do. The demons try to convince people that they have this form or that form, and the people end up making an idol of something that a demon might have shown to them, but that doesn't really exist because the demon itself is formless and far worse than whatever they, dreamed up.
Yeah. And in all of humanity, before Jesus arrives, other than the Jews, are making these idols, some of them terrible, some of them just beautiful, it doesn't matter, these statues, and they're worshiping them as gods or as representations of gods.
Usually as gods. People, that's one of the things about the idolaters is that they actually believed that the statues, the images or whatever, somehow locked their god into that position so that they could burn incense to it or whatever.
So when they worship Mother Earth, and they build a statue of a mother, do they?
Yeah, I don't know about Mother Earth, but I'm thinking of like Moloch and the Baals and stuff like that.
Well, the thing is that throughout the Old Testament, God's promising he didn't put it in as plain English as we know now. He didn't say, my son who's begotten and who is God is going to come down and save you from your sins. He just promises he's going to send a savior. Someone to save us. He
promises a savior. He promises an eternal king as a son to David. He makes a lot of different promises. All of them are fulfilled in Christ, but he never quite reveals how that's going to work out.
And so all we hear from the prophets and from a couple people like Moses who said that I saw a burning bush. He didn't claim that God was the burning bush. He just saw a bush that on fire but didn't burn.
He went to see what it was about, and then the voice spoke to him, hey, take your sandals off, you're on hallowed ground.
So we don't have any recording of what God looks like. All we had, and it would, if you'd asked a Jew back then, show me what God looks like, draw a picture of him. It's not just that it would be bad to try, but he didn't know what he looked like.
Blasphemous to try. Yeah, well, yeah, they
it would
didn't
be
know,
blasphemous
but it would
to try, but he wouldn't know.
I
don't know. We just know he's the creator of everything.
Sometimes he's a cloud, and sometimes he's a pillar of fire, and sometimes he's sometimes he's an angel because he sends angels out, but
yeah,
none of these is
they
God.
understood these things as manifestations and not
they're
actually
they're
God.
just ways to show us the presence of God is all. Well, the thing is, when Solomon built the temple, he said a prayer, like kind of the dedication of the temple.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really interesting because it kind of almost echoes, or we could say that our invocations of the saints through, say, statues and pictures and the kind of thing, echo Solomon's prayer of dedication. I'm going to read a couple of passages of it just to give you an idea of what, how he thought of it.
Okay.
So he says, let's see, he's talking about God's promise to David, Solomon's father. There shall never fail you a man before me to sit upon the throne of Israel, if only your sons take heed to their way and to walk before me as you have walked before me. Now therefore, O God of Israel, let your word be confirmed, which you have spoken to your servant David, my father. But will God indeed dwell on the earth? Behold, heaven and the highest heavens cannot contain you. How much less this house which I have built? Yet have regard to the prayer of your servant and to his supplication, O Lord my God, listening to the cry and to the prayer which your servant prays before you this day, that your eyes may be open night and day towards this house, the place of which you have said, my name shall be there, that you may listen to the prayer which your servant offers towards this place, and hear the supplication of your servant and of your people Israel, when they pray towards this place, yes, here in heaven, your dwelling place, and when you hear, forgive. So he's acknowledging that God's not actually there in the temple. The temple can't contain God. But he's just saying, hey, God, this is what we have. So when we pray towards this temple, please hear our prayer in heaven where you are. And then he goes through a whole lot of different, like parallel supplications. Hey, when Israel falls away from you and then they realize their sin and turn back towards you and pray towards this temple, please hear them and forgive them. When we have a drought because we've sinned and then we turn back towards you and pray towards this temple, please hear us and forgive us and give us rain. And, on and on and on and on like that. And it's kind of the same way. I mean, the thing is, when Jesus died, the curtain between in front of the tabernacle was ripped in two. So now that barrier is gone. It doesn't have to be the temple. It can be anywhere we are. But we can still use things like the temple as focuses of our prayers. Hey, well, the Saint thing Joseph, is, when I pray towards the statue, hear my prayer in heaven next to God where you are, and carry my prayer to God, please.
It opened up two things, though. It opened up the boundary between us and God, and it gave us an image of God. We do have an image now.
Well, yeah, because Jesus
that
was
didn't
a man.
exist in the Old Testament. Now we have an image. We know what God looks like, or at least that person of God is an actual person.
Yeah.
So now we know what God looks like. So to make a statue of Jesus, no, that's not a graven image.
No,
this is what
God.
Jesus looks like. It helps us think about,
yeah.
And it helps us keep. I mean, especially. There are different statues that would kind of call to mind certain aspects of what Jesus did. Like a crucifix reminds us of the suffering that he went through for our sake. So it's not a graven image to make an image of Jesus on the cross. It's a way to commemorate or to call to mind as you pray to Jesus, this is what he did. This is what it looked like.
Yeah. Yeah. That's all. Yeah. That's all it is. It's a way of calling to mind, a way of mentally putting yourself in the presence and then asking God, hey, I'm directing my prayers to this crucifix, hear my prayers from the cross that you died on, which he's not on the cross, but hear my prayers across time, so that in your death you can, add my prayers and my little sufferings to your great suffering, which you gave to the Father and pleased the Father, so that my sufferings can please the Father.
And include
that's why we
me
pray
in
in front of crucifixes.
That promise that you made to the good thief that hung next to you.
That's right.
So in both, whether you're talking about a statue of Jesus or a statue of saints, they both are for the purpose of bringing to mind what we're doing, who we're praying to, why we're praying. But it is a little bit different between a statue of Jesus and a statue of a saint. When we're looking at a statue of Jesus, we are talking to Jesus, and we're not imagining him in the statue. We're just keeping that in our minds as we pray in front of him, before him. Now,
right.
if we have a statue of a saint, it is slightly different. We are keeping in mind because we are talking to him, but the act becomes a little bit different in that we imagine the saint with us praying to God.
Oh, right. Yeah, because he's
side
one
by
of us.
Side, as opposed to
we're part of the communion. Yeah,
up ahead of us.
Exactly. Right.
It's a different. It's just a different way of thinking, and Catholics who have been praying like this all their lives kind of do it automatically and don't really even think about it. But a Protestant who thinks that we're worshiping graven images wouldn't quite get that.
It's kind of like when you were 5, you struggled to button your shirt, but now at this age, try to think through the muscular manipulations that you need in order to button your shirt. You'd have a hard time even thinking through them because it just happens. It's kind of that way with if you grew up Catholic praying to saints.
Yeah, or dialing a phone number. Of course, nobody dials phone numbers anymore. They just press.
I was going to say, what's
name.
Dialing mean?
There was a time when you had to press each button, and then they came out with phone memories, and it was all yeah, you had to turn that little dial.
There was a time when it was a literal dial. Circular. That's right. Hey, okay. Little known fact. What that dial actually did when you turned it, and then it was rotating back, is that it would successfully make and break contact of the phone with the phone company. And because that's how the phone company then picked up and figured out, how it was. So you had so many make breaks, and that was a number, and then a pause, and so many more, and that was a number, and then a pause. And the phone company electronics were designed to pick up on that, and from that figure out where to connect you up with. And I confirmed that this was actually how it worked several times back in the day when you actually had phones that worked that way. Yeah. You pick up the phone, and instead of dialing with the dial, you could click the receiver buttons up and down that many times, and then pause, and then do it for the next number however many times, and then pause, and so forth, and it would dial the number.
You know what? I was with you once when we did, probably the first time, because
now
we were trying it out, and we called Mom, and Mom's like, what?
Here's what people don't realize. So this idea of clicking it in order to dial was once upon a time a thing that people did. And so what might happen, if you lost a connection, you might want to get it back right away. And so you might call the operator in order to say, hey, I need that connection back that I was just on. Can you hook them back up for me? And how do you get the operator? You dial O, which is 10 clicks. And so you click the thing 10 times, that would give you the operator. But what has happened, that sort of habit made its way into movies.
Yeah.
But the movie makers completely forgot why that habit was there in the first place. And so you'll see people in movies, they lose a connection and they'll click it like 2 or 3 times and then say, hello?
That bugs the daylights out of me. Every show does it. When someone hangs up, they start clicking on. You don't do that if somebody hangs up on you. That's not going to help you. Hello. Yeah. Hello. I didn't know that's where it came from, though.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I just knew that you're not going to help the situation by hanging up the phone. It's dumb. I've never even seen someone try to do that. Except in the movies.
Exactly. Except in the movies.
Oh, well. I think we've exhausted the subject.
I think we have.
Okay.
But here's the thing, though. This idea of the communion of saints, and by the way, I mean, if you accept the books of Maccabees, you see that there is, prayer not only to the dead, but for the dead. And then you see in the New Testament very clear indications that if you're in a state of grace, you can pray for somebody. But if you commit a serious sin, so that you're out of the state of grace, you got to go back to the church, be reconciled to the church, and so forth. Your prayers don't work anymore. But you can pray for somebody who committed a lesser sin, a non-grievous sin. You can pray for them to help them become freed of that sin, of the guilt of that sin. And this is even indicated in some of the letters of John.
Okay, wait a minute now. See, I was thinking about this the other day. So you're a parent, your daily routine includes, do this, do that, maybe fast for half a day and offer that up for one of your kids. Say a rosary, offer that up for one of these kids. And then you do something to put yourself out of the state of grace.
Okay.
Now, is there any point in to continue doing these things? Are they
there's two
of any advantage?
Two schools of thought. There's two schools of thought on that. One school of thought is there's no point within the life of grace of doing so. However, because it retains the natural habituation, you should continue to do so as though you're in a state of grace. And furthermore, since we have this concept of, how we have this idea of perfect contrition, so that what you can do is you can ask God for perfect contrition, and you shouldn't go to communion until you've been to confession in this case.
Right.
But you can ask God for a perfect contrition, and then hoping in His granting of that grace, continue to do these acts so that at the very least they maintain the natural habit and perhaps they're meritorious. Now that's one school of thought. The second school of thought is that yes, you should maintain them anyway, because what happens is that if you do, they store up the graces, and then at whatever time you go to confession and return to a state of grace, then all of those things that you've done, the merits of those apply to the extent that they would apply in your newly restored state of grace. Now, grace is something that grows in you. So it's like, okay, if you're in the habit of staying in a state of grace, you don't, do things like get drunk or view pornography or the many things that are available today that cause people to fall from grace. If you don't do these things, you stay in a state of grace and you are saying these prayers, your grace grows and grows and grows and grows. And the more it grows, the more efficacious these acts are in winning the grace, both for you and for those that you're praying for. Well, okay, so let's say you do something wrong, and then you have to go to confession, and under this second school of thought, the graces that these acts would merit would only be at the very beginning life of grace, because you've just been to confession again, and you're brand new, and you've got a very small life of grace at that point. But nonetheless, that's worthwhile. So
hey, you
in either school of thought, I think it makes sense to do your best to try to continue them. I certainly can understand the temptation to think, well, there's no point anyway. I'm just going to leave off that and get something done with my day or whatever. That's.
If anything, it should create in you a sense of urgency.
To get back to confession.
Get back into the state of grace. It does for me. I mean, over the years, as my prayer life developed, on those occasions where I slip, in the beginning it was like, I need to get to confession because
the stuff that you can't pray.
I don't want to go to hell. But then
now
later
it's like,
it became,
I need to get to
I have to pray for my kids. I need to get to confession so I can help my kids.
Right. It's like I got to get into a state of grace so that I can pray again. It's good. It's like okay, hell, whatever. But I want to be in union with God. I want to be able to pray.
Separated. Yeah.
There really
is
a
that
transformation
that grows,
takes place over time.
Yeah. Okay, we have to talk a little bit. There's all kinds of weird. Okay, we've not been talking about church politics at all. I guess it sickens me, but there's all kinds of crazy things going on. For example, Pope Francis, I think this was in Italy. Well, he was praying Italian, and he said this new version of the Our Father, where he's
Do you have
changed
the English
the words
translation of that?
Of a 2,000-year-old prayer.
Right. So the part we're talking about is lead us not into temptation, et ne nos inducas in tentationem if you're praying Latin. It means the same thing. So he says, and he actually came out with the intention to do this some years ago.
Yeah, I remember it.
You remember?
That's
stupid. He won't do it. Yeah,
whatever.
He'll figure out that that's a stupid thing. So he did change it. He did it, and he started praying in the this new thing that he concocted. And his objection was, if you're asking God not to lead you into temptation, that means that you must think that maybe God's going to tempt you to sin.
Right.
But so set that thought aside for a minute. Do you have the translation of the new form that he used?
Hold on 1 second. Change the phrase, lead us not into temptation, to, do not let us fall into temptation. But that's not what I heard.
The one I heard was, hold on. Let me look, because that's not what I heard.
Do not abandon us to temptation is
bingo. That's what I heard.
That's what the new version says, according to... Now,
the way he
Taylor
actually
Marshall
did it
was
in
the
Italian.
one who was, and Taylor Marshall's a bit of a language expert, or at least more than I am anyway. But so he's the one who was translating it or talking about the translation.
Yeah, I'm looking for a 2021 article because his use of this new form was just recent, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just in like a month ago, maybe.
Here we go. So here's one finally, because all the articles I'm coming up with are like 2019, back when he said that he... okay, the one article that I found is...
claimed that he wanted to do it, he was saying something different. But when he actually did it, I'm reading 2019. Everything I'm reading is from 2019.
Except for Taylor Marshall's thing. But he actually did say that maybe nobody's reporting on the fact that of how he said the prayer, because he already said that he was going to do it.
He said he was going to do it, and then suddenly we have this recording of him doing it. It's not like he didn't put it in a book or anything. He was just saying the Our Father, and he changed the words.
Let's even.
No,
You know,
it's in the new missal, the Italian missal.
Oh, so what's the English translation of the Italian missal?
Okay, the Greek is "lead us not into temptation," and the new Greek is "abandon us not into temptation."
Abandon us not. So Pope Francis's initial objection is, well, gee, why would the Father lead you into temptation such that you have to ask him not to do that? That would be a horrible thing for a father to do. Fathers don't lead their kids into a temptation to sin. And his solution to that is abandon us not into temptation, or abandon us not in temptation, or whatever. Like that's a better view of like he would abandon us if we don't pray hard for him not to abandon us. We have to keep clamoring for his attention. Please don't abandon us, Father. And that's Pope Francis's solution to this.
It doesn't help what he's saying the problem is. Instead, he should be teaching people about why we say it this way.
Yeah, exactly. Now,
it's more about don't put us to an incredible test that we're going to have trouble passing. Not that, but we accept that God is going to do that sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he does lead us into temptation in that way. He puts us in situations where we're tested, and it glorifies God when we pass the test. We're just asking him to not push us to the limit. That's the point of the prayer. I don't think changing it to "do not abandon us" really changes all that much. But it doesn't make it better. It doesn't make people think, oh, sometimes God abandons us in a temptation. He just doesn't lead us into temptation.
That's even worse. The fact is, God does test us. God, think of the martyrs.
Yeah.
God providentially allowed for the course of the world to occur in a way that led them into that position of martyrdom. He led them into temptation. And they withstood the test and now are great, glorious martyrs that magnify God's glory that we pray to.
Yeah.
And in fact, we even have, I love this, this one passage in Exodus 16, because it kind of shows that God's, he reached out to Abraham, he made a covenant with him, and then, there were Abraham's children, and then, the whole thing into Egypt with Israel and his son Joseph and all of that kind of stuff. But now Moses is the, the real, he's kind of the proto-Christ now. And he's coming, leading the people out of Egypt, and he gets them into the wilderness. And they're so new to this whole concept of being taken care of by God that as soon as they get, a few days away from the Egyptians, they say, oh, why did you lead us out here? Now we're going to die. That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But then in chapter 16 of Exodus, it says, then the Lord said to Moses, behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you. He's talking about manna. And the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day, that I may test them whether they will walk in my law or not. This is actually the very first command. I mean, other than the commands that he gave at the, the beginning when he commanded Adam and Eve, but this is the very first, like piece of the law that he gave the Israelites after bringing them out of Egypt, is basically, okay, I'm going to give you this bread. I want you to gather it 6 days out of the week, only 1 day's worth at a time, except on the 6th day you gather 2 days worth. And that's all. And you got to trust me beyond that. That was his first command. But he told Moses, I'm going to do this that I may test them to see that they'll, hold my commands and abide by them.
Very specifically led them into temptation.
He led them into the temptation to think that they needed more. And of course they fell to the temptation. They gathered more. Well, what happened? The stuff that they saved over, it got worms in it and stuff. And then, they might have been tempted, oh, we got worms, so on the 6th day, we're not going to gather 2 days worth, even though God said to. So then they don't gather it. And then the seventh day, he didn't give them any because he told them to get 2 days worth on the sixth day. And so then those who didn't get 2 days worth, they had to go hungry for a day.
These people just never learn.
Well, they were new. God was doing easy tests, but the point is, he was definitely doing tests. He was leading them. And that's how he does with individuals too. You start out in a prayer life and maybe God gives you small temptations. Every challenge is a temptation to abandon hope in God, to not trust in God. And so he gives you these challenges and you just deepen and deepen and deepen. Every one of them is an opportunity to deepen your trust in God. Now,
the thing is, whenever I talk to new Christians or, I guess Christians who have had kind of a reawakening anyway, and who are just want to talk about 24/7. They'll tell me time after time how God talks to them and how they'll be praying about this and all of a sudden this will happen and God talks to them nonstop, it seems. And I guess 30 years ago I thought the same thing. But now I haven't heard a word from God in 10 years, 15 years. But it's not because I got smarter and realized, no, God's not talking to me. It's just that God kind of meets us at our own level.
Yeah.
If you're a wimp, you get easy tests. As you get better, you get harder tests.
I forget what saint witnessed a vision of three cloistered nuns praying, and Jesus was kind of pampering one, and the other he would once in a while he would slap her in the face hard, but then he would immediately caress her and soothe her. And the other one, he would grab her by her hair and thrash her around, and then he didn't even follow it up with any pampering or soothing or anything. And the saint is like, what the heck? He's like, well, the one that I thrashed around is the one who loves me the most and who has the greatest share in my glory, because she doesn't need that constant reassurance and pampering from me, because that's how strong her faith and her trust has grown.
I wish Jesus would figure out that I need some reassurance sometimes.
Well, it's like when we were
talking to all these new Christians. Oh, you should have seen this, and God spoke to me, and I'm like, well,
okay, well,
I'm talking to you all the time.
It's like when we were in the kitchen, and I said, "Isn't there a prayer?" And I realized actually that prayer really is the Our Father. But isn't there a prayer because it's like Jesus said, no greater man was born of woman before John the Baptist, but the least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. And I thought, the least in the kingdom of heaven, I wouldn't mind being the least in the kingdom of heaven. So isn't there a prayer that says, hey God, just don't give me any tests to elevate my honor and share in your glory. Just let me be the least.
Yeah.
So that, because I'd rather be the least than lose it completely because I failed some test that you gave me. That's actually what the prayer of the Our Father is. That line of the Our Father, lead us not into temptation. That's all that is. Now, of course, the fact is, as we deepen our prayer life, God does lead us into the temptations that he knows that we can handle. He gives us the grace to handle. And sometimes people choose to reject that grace.
Yeah.
It might be a spiral into some kind of carnal sin. It might be some kind of arrogance where somebody gets latched on to some kind of, scientific way of thinking, and they now think, oh, I don't need God. I can figure out everything out with science. Who knows?
Or it might be just a one-time slip up, and
it might be a slip up, and then okay, but in that case, God uses it to strengthen your knowledge of dependence on him. But once in a while, somebody fails the test and deliberately through their will simply rejects God for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. Well, that's not the only change he made, though. He also changed the Gloria.
Oh, really? The one in Mass?
Yeah. So in the So
Latin
this is
one?
the Russian missile, and this is the Latin. See, I don't understand. I thought there was one Latin, and then all the other languages were translations of that.
It could be.
That's
is
how
it
I thought
possible? Is it possible that he?
Oh, wait a minute. Okay, so this is the new Latin or the new Italian missile.
Okay.
Which is a translation of the Latin missile.
Right.
And it is... These changes have not been confirmed yet.
Oh, okay.
But we have a film of St. Francis praying the Our Father with this new version. But as far as the Gloria, where it says, on earth, peace to men of good will, it says, peace on earth to men loved by the Lord. Which makes no sense to me.
Peace on earth to men loved by the Lord.
Yeah. But I mean it's not that big a deal because do you remember how long we had a mistranslation of the Gloria in our own Mass, in the English Mass?
So how did we say it? Glory to God in the highest and we just said peace to his
people on earth.
That was so stupid. And there are some biblical translations that say, because that's what the angels sang at the birth of Christ. And some translations say, glory to God in the highest, peace on earth to those on whom his favor rests.
Okay.
Well, okay.
So I guess you could come up with this translation, except that it's supposed to be a translation from the Latin.
And the Latin is Gloria in
not
excelsis
what you
Deo,
want it to
et
be.
in terra pax hominibus bonae voluntatis, men of goodwill.
Now, I mean, to me, look, it's a big deal because he's trying to change the words of the Our Father, and it's stupid. And here he's also changing the words of the Gloria, which is also stupid. The thing is, we mistranslated the words of consecration.
Yeah.
For how long?
I don't know. Was it?
I mean,
70s to the. I mean, whenever the English one.
Yeah,
came
it was
out
from the 70s all the way to 2011.
Almost 40 years. Yeah, it was 40 years. Early 70s, wasn't it? So almost 40 years.
There's an argument to be made that we didn't even have a proper English Mass throughout that whole time. And you notice that it was one of the reasons there was so much effort to get the Latin Mass back in, was because of those words.
Right.
I mean, that...
Now, we'll have a debate on whether those transubstantiation, whether those were valid or not. But it's kind of undeniable. Here's what's interesting. That was one of the debating points as people were pushing for the bishops' permissions and that kind of stuff in various places to use the Latin Mass. Which interestingly, the Latin, you didn't need a bishop's permission to use the Novus Ordo Latin. I don't know why more priests didn't just do that. But all the people who wanted the Latin Mass wanted the old Latin Mass, the traditional Latin Mass. But here's what's ironic. Since we did the new translation, the traditional Latin Mass, it's almost as though getting a better English translation improved our access to the graces of the Mass. So that now those graces are bearing fruit in an even greater acceleration of interest and use of the traditional Latin Mass.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, it was really slow going at first. I mean, it was like a group of people would fight in their diocese for 10 years before they'd finally get permission to have one Latin Mass in the whole diocese.
Yeah,
and
maybe
now,
once a month or something.
Like the Archdiocese of Cincinnati has a couple of them, and then right across the river there's another one. So if you're in Cincinnati, you have quite a few choices. And I know more and more people are getting access to it, and more people are loving it, including the young people.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a really. I mean, some of the young people, sure, it's a novelty thing, perhaps, but I think there's more to it than that.
Yeah,
for a lot of them,
and we've got bishops, not bishops, priests, Thomas Reese a Jesuit priest who's kind of prominent and he's the editor-in-chief for the Jesuit magazine America.
Okay.
Is asking for bishops to have the authority to keep the Latin Mass under thumb and to make it go
quash the
away.
traditional Latin Mass.
And comes out and says these young people should not be going to this Mass. And he's angry that young people are going to the Mass. Because the young people should be going to this hippie Mass. Yeah, I know.
They want people to go to the hippie Mass.
Because that's for young people suddenly. Like, I mean, this movement died in the 80s right after it gained life in the 70s. You know what I mean? It's over. The hippie movement is dead, and out of this arises the old Latin Mass. But they're angry because what was my point there? Yeah, it's getting more and more strength, and young people are like it, and they see that young people are liking it, and they don't like that, and it's a good thing. Meanwhile, Vigano
the Pope is the one who, at some offset comment offhand or something like that, but somebody was asked about the rise in popularity of the Latin Mass, and he just acted like he's befuddled by the whole thing. He says, "I don't understand it. Why everybody wants this rigidness? It's not supposed to be rigid." That was his complete. That's his complete understanding of the Latin Mass and the phenomenon of people wanting to have access to the traditional Latin Mass. I mean, that shows how I don't. If you take him at his word, that shows how ignorant he is as the Pope.
The thing is, I can kind of see how we come out of the 50s where people are strong, traditional, and into the 60s, this new age where it's like free love and sex and drugs and rock and roll. I can see how some priests are kind of like thinking, I'm going to change with the times and reach these people, and I'm going to pull them into the church. And I can see how he would be fooled into thinking that this is going to work.
Maybe.
But it's been decades.
I could forgive you for being fooled for 2 decades with that thought.
Yeah. It's been half a century.
But when it clearly didn't work, when it backfired.
It bombed. How, I mean, get your head out of your butt. It just didn't work. You got to admit that at some point. Yeah.
Anyway.
So
now there's
Vigano's
Jesuits
writing letters again.
But by the way, I want to correct earlier because I was trying to come up with the name of Pope Benedict's, permission to use the traditional Latin Mass, which the Jesuits are now trying to basically roll back and say, nope, let's put it back in the hands of the bishops.
Yeah.
Summorum Pontificum is the one, is the letter from Pope Benedict that I was trying to think of. The one that I was referring to, Ordinatio Sacerdotalis, that's actually the one where Pope John Paul II defined that women can't be priests. And so that's the infallible definition that priesthood is only for men. So that's what that is. But anyway, so Vigano, I know you've been itching to get this on here.
So he wrote a letter. I don't really understand what. I think he's addressing some of these conferences and these summits and synods that are coming up. They sound pretty bad. We've got, and I mean, these are things that Pope Francis wanted to happen. One on health, and he's got people like Dr. Fauci and Kelsey Clinton.
He's got Dr. Fauci and Chelsea Clinton.
People like that coming to this. And,
health.
And health. Like
health, okay. Okay.
See, people can hear it real plain when they're listening, but we're listening to each other on earbuds, and we don't hear quite as much.
Yeah.
And I don't even. I guess it's. I think this really is somehow linked to COVID and enforcing vaccines. I think that's what really this is all about. But it's bad news. And at the same time, we've got this meeting coming up for the I don't know what they're calling it, Eucharistic conference. I think they're trying to figure out how to get rid of the Latin Mass. I think that's what the whole conference is about. Or come up with a new Mass. I thought the Amazon Synod, I thought that was about coming up with a new Mass.
Not about women in the priesthood, but about a new Mass.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And I thought it's going to, I don't know, they're going to kind of, for some reason they're focusing on the Spanish speaking people. But never mind, forget I said that. That's what I always thought the Amazon Synod was really about, is coming up with a new Mass. And I was kind of afraid of that, but I still think maybe it was.
Mm-hmm. Could, yeah.
I mean,
okay.
They're trying to combat the Tridentine Mass for some reason, which is just stupid. Why are you fighting it? It's not like there's a bunch of old hoagie priests enforcing this on people. It's the people who are asking for it.
Yeah.
The laity is asking for it. That's why do you call it rigid? It's
and see, that's
just
where
we're not.
It's like, how do you read this when the people are agitating and asking for that which has been the practice of the church for centuries, more than a millennium.
Yeah.
And you're saying we have to find ways to keep the people from having this. Well, then what's your objection to it? It's like, do you object to the graces that has given the church all of those centuries? It really makes you wonder about the motivations. I mean, it's these kinds of things that don't make any sense whatsoever that make you tempted to think, wow, do they really have diabolical motivations here? Are they trying to serve Satan? Because if they sat down and said, how can we best serve Satan while still looking like, while still having the trappings of the church, you couldn't come up with a better way.
Yeah. And it's not like a bunch of old people who are just latched onto the old way and they don't want to see it die out. It's a fresh movement. It's a new movement.
It's a growing movement.
It's young people. And it's worldwide. We all want it back. We tried the new way. It sucked. Let's go to the old way. Oh, well, anyway, so Vigano wrote this letter addressing some of these new things coming up. And 3 separate times he uses the word antichrist. The first one, he says, the Holy See has deliberately renounced the supernatural mission of the church. Okay, pause here. They have. I mean, the Tutti Frutti encyclical, what else was that?
Okay,
we're not going to talk about God. We're going to talk about fellowship.
Yeah.
So that did happen.
Yep.
Making itself the servant of the New World Order and Masonic globalism. I don't know about Masonic. I argue with Jason about the Freemasons all the time. Every time someone says the Freemasons, I think you could take that word out and put in the word communist. Because I think communism is more behind this than Freemasons. But some people will say communism is a product of the Freemasons.
Of the Freemasons,
I just don't know about that. I don't know. Was Lenin a Freemason? Marx?
I don't know.
Was he a Freemason?
Question, was Marx a Freemason? I don't know. You know what? I could probably find out. Let me look that up while you're talking.
Okay. Anyway, he says, making itself the servant of the New World Order and Masonic globalism. Yes, they are doing that. If you accept Masonic globalism as what I call the communist agenda, then yes, the church is doing that. It's completely doing that. The Holy See is doing that, not the church. The Pope and the cardinals are kind of giving themselves over to this globalism. Mm-hmm. The fact that Biden can receive communion is proof enough of it. And then he says, making yourself the servant. I'm going to start over this and do the whole sentence this time. The Holy See has deliberately renounced the supernatural mission of the church, making itself the servant of the New World Order and Masonic globalism and an antichristic counter magisterium. So we have the magisterium, we have the seat of Peter, and now the Holy See is kind of setting itself up as a counter magisterium against the seat of Peter. And he describes it as antichristic, meaning it's against Christ. Not necessarily that this is the Antichrist.
Right. And more like, if we say that the church is supposed to be Christic, in other words, the church's mission is supposed to be about the mission of Christ, and the Pope is setting it up so that the church's mission is about something other than the mission of Christ, which is proclaiming the gospel and saving souls, forgiving sins and saving souls. Instead, it's about this aspect or that aspect of human flourishing. It's about humanitarianism. It's about fellowship.
About environmentalism, usually.
Environmentalism, yeah. So it's antichristic in all of those senses. Yeah, exactly. Even those things, even those things which might be good in and of themselves, in the proper place, done by a governmental organization or a volunteer organization of people or a charity group or whatever, it's antichristic, and the church doesn't have any business making that its primary mission in a supplant of the Great Commission.
Yeah. If the church is going to take over all that stuff, then who's going to lead souls to God?
Yeah.
Because that's the most important thing.
Who's going to teach people, this is sin. If you do it, you got to be forgiven for it. Here's how you get forgiven. And here's how you return to God so that you can be saved and go to heaven when you die.
If I have a full belly because the local pastor gave me food, but I still go to hell, the food didn't do me any good.
That's true. Yeah,
I need to get to heaven. Then I'll worry about food. So he's completely right here. Now later on, he brings up La Salette. This is an apparition. The visionary. It was an apparition, and apparently there are more than one texts, and some of them are argued about. Mm-hmm. So La Salette was an approved apparition, but how do I say this? There are more than one text from La Salette, and not all of them. People don't agree about which ones are.
Oh, there's questions of provenance. There may be some quotes to La Salette that are ascribed that we're not certain are real. Okay.
Right. So it's argued about, and the authenticity is argued about. And Vigano quotes from the one that is often argued over. And this is a warning from Our Lady that says, Rome will lose the faith and become the seat of the Antichrist. So okay,
but
all he's doing there is quoting.
If you accept it as a quote, it's not clear just from the quote itself whether it means the see of Rome or the city of Rome.
Sorry, I went to get coffee. I thought Danny would talk longer than that. Yeah, not only that, but okay, the seat of the Antichrist. Are we talking about the seat of Peter itself? It doesn't make that clear.
Right. What is the seat of the Antichrist? It just means, it seems to me that it just refers to, okay, it's going to be where the Antichrist rules from.
And I would think that she's warning about when she says Rome will lose the faith. I do take that to mean the ruling church, the part of the Catholic Church that rules the rest of the church. And I can't see how
who have written
that has happened. I think
specifically about the indefectibility.
They brought idols into the Vatican.
Well, I know. but there's saints who have written about that, have specifically written about how the Christ's promise of indefectibility applies particularly to the Roman See.
Okay. But did that promise include the, say, the protection against falling into idolatry? Because that seems to have already happened.
Okay, so here's how I interpret that protection.
Okay, Pope didn't worship the Pachamama, but he was part of a service that worshipped Pachamama.
Even if he did, here's how I see that protection of indefectibility. That it will never come that it is wrong for us as the Christian church to obey the dictates of that are coming from the Roman See in terms of telling us what to believe or how to practice.
So when the Pope teaches from the chair of Peter or commands from the chair of Peter to follow that teaching or to follow those rules will not be sinful.
Right. Now, which teaching? That's the thing. If you propose a hypothesis, you could say, well, let's suppose that the Pope teaches from the chair of Peter, that marriage is not permanent and that divorce and remarriage is okay and that we don't have to worry about annulments anymore, or that artificial contraception is okay, or something like that. It was and commands all Catholics to believe that. Well, okay. You're presenting a hypothesis that, according to my model of indefectibility, that's exactly the hypothesis that'll never happen.
Right.
For example.
See, that's how I've always thought of the Catholic Church.
Now, that doesn't mean the Pope isn't going to go have concubines and practice contraception, while he's living it up with concubines in the Vatican or something like that.
Right.
And now, we've had popes who have done things that are just as bad.
That's what kind of calls into question is, could the Pope be the Antichrist? I don't even know.
Well,
see, that's the thing. When they talk about the Antichrist, they're talking about the creature in Revelation.
Well, maybe, or somehow identified with the creature.
But I don't even know if you could interpret that to an actual one person.
But Jesus refers to an Antichrist.
Now, he does.
Yeah, he said one will rise up
John,
who will perform acts that are so great that it will turn even the faithful were that possible. Well, I mean, this Pope is a bumbler.
Okay.
There's no way he meets that definition. This Pope is not who Christ was calling the Antichrist. Not even close.
Right. But, in in 1 John chapter 4, he says, "This is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you heard was coming, and is now in the world already."
Okay.
So, I don't... If you take Antichrist to be what John is kind of describing here...
The spirit of the Antichrist is the beast working in the world then. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Many false prophets have gone out into the world. By this you know the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is from God, and every spirit that does not confess Jesus is not from God. Okay, I hate to say this, but and John's describing what an Antichrist is. Hasn't the Pope done this already?
And instead of confessing Jesus in the flesh, he wants to confess, about straws floating in the ocean and about Mother Earth and about Amazonian.
Well, wasn't he asked in one of those famous interviews that didn't get recorded, but which he didn't clarify later?
Eugenio Scalfari interviews.
Yeah, he said something to the effect that Jesus wasn't God until after he was risen or something. I don't know. Yeah, that's what it was.
Some
didn't know he was God.
Right.
Yeah, it was dumb, whatever it was, but it depends on what you mean by teach. But that in that regard, then the Pope has already become the Antichrist. He's showing himself.
Scalfari goes and he does these interviews with the Pope, and then he comes out and says, "Here's what the Pope said," and the Pope has yet to contradict him.
Yeah, he's not denying it.
It would be one thing if Scalfari was, like, if he wasn't granting any interviews and Scalfari was just making stuff up and saying, hey, here, let me tell you what Pope Francis really thinks because, he gives me secret cues when he does his speeches or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, that would be worth just ignoring.
And then he continues to give him interviews.
But he does interviews. And then he comes
even
up with
after
the stuff that scandalizes the faithful. It allows those faithful who don't want to believe the teachings of the church, who want to think, oh yeah, the church is going to change its teachings. Oh yeah, homosexuality is okay. Oh yeah, contraception is okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, nobody's going to hell. And so people who want to believe these things, they read these interviews with, that Scalfari writes, is, oh yeah, communism is a good thing. And then they believe those things. Well, those are all heresies that are going to lead people to hell, and the Pope doesn't correct them.
They're antichristic. Yeah.
They're antichristic. They're scandalous. They facilitate sin on the part of the faithful who might be tempted to believe these things. And now, the Pope even says this. Okay, I guess I can believe it too. And he doesn't address it at all. And then goes and does more interviews. So, yeah, on that point, it's like, yeah, that's hard to argue that he's not in the spirit of the Antichrist.
Yeah, yeah. You couldn't call Vigano wrong for saying it this way so far. We got one more quote. So he's talking about the faithful who are disgusted by what's going on in the church today. And he says, by the desertion of those who by holy orders are called to bear witness to the holy gospel and not to support the establishment of the kingdom of the Antichrist. So in other words, people are disgusted by priests and bishops and popes who instead of preaching the gospel are preaching this new world order, which is of the Antichrist. The globalism that we all know is Pope Francis is trying to move us toward.
His pet project within the church. His pet project is to get the church fully into the globalist sphere. So
how can you argue against Vigano what he says there? He doesn't say he says the establishment of the kingdom of the Antichrist. He doesn't call Pope Francis the Antichrist.
Right. He's more like saying, okay, the Holy See, through Pope Francis, is serving the spirit of the Antichrist. Is kind of more along the lines of what he's saying.
Yeah.
And because it's doing so, it's giving credence to those things for the whole church that is effectively making Rome the seat of the Antichrist.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like Pope Francis is selling the seat,
Mm-hmm.
Well, I wanted to address what Vigano said and some more of the goofy things that Pope Francis is doing. But the church is still the church. The Pope is still the Pope. He has not taught heresy. He's done some pretty rotten things, but yeah. So,
and we can rely on Jesus' promise.
The Jesus promise, and we got to just trust in that. That's all we can do at this point.
Now, here's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering if there's a play, a diabolical, a otherworldly play in the works here where Pope Francis, so the devil wants to get as many souls as he can.
Yeah.
So he's got his hooks into Pope Francis and to a lot of bishops and that kind of stuff, cardinals and so forth. And so clearly he's even if he can't force the Pope to teach error, he's getting the Pope to fail to do a lot of things that are allowing the faithful to fall into error without having any direct contradiction by the Pope. He's getting the Pope to do things that allow the faithful to think that their errors are really okay. So that's the one side.
That is certainly happening.
Let's suppose somebody else who's not the Pope sets himself up as a sort of Pope-like figure.
Or even tries to claim...
maybe even tries to claim the papacy.
Throne.
I don't know. But my thinking is that somebody else then is like a opposite of Pope Francis, except that he's outside the church.
Yeah.
But all those people who are disgusted with Pope Francis, now it's like the temptations there. Oh, well, wait a minute. This guy's saying everything we agree with, and then it's only going to be a few who are like, well, Pope Francis is wrong about so many things that this guy's right about, but this guy's not in the church, and Pope Francis is the Pope of the church. And so the devil, by doing that, can drive a wedge and whittle it down to you've got this large scale abandonment of Catholic truth and fall into heresy by people who think they're being, remaining in union with the Pope, but they're really following a flawed understanding of what's going on. And then you've got the other people who want to be faithful to the 2,000-year traditions of the church, and they leave the church in order to be faithful to that. And I could see the Antichrist being on that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Although
that's why we have to accept him as Pope.
Yeah.
And we can't leave the church even if he's a really rotten Pope.
Right. So that's, gotta watch out on all sides. Times like this.
Yeah.
At times like this. I mean, have there been any times quite like this? I don't know.
The weird thing is, I remember I was probably around 15 years old. Mm-hmm. And I was just starting to learn about church history and stuff like that. And I remember commenting to Mom, I said, we live in kind of a boring time.
You jerk.
We have,
he cursed us by saying that.
Pope John Paul II, he's a pretty good Pope. He's not doing any miracles or anything, but he's a pretty good Pope. We don't have any major... We've got this bad thing with the sex-perverted priests, but, it's understandable that there's a certain amount of bad people even in the church. You can get through that. It's not really... compared to history, it's kind of boring times. And that was only, a couple decades ago. And now, look, we've got the...
the
we've never had anything like this.
It turned out to be far worse than you thought, though.
Yeah. It was like, hey, you don't know what you're talking about. About to get hit with some real scandal here. We've got false idols in the Vatican.
In the Vatican, yeah.
That's the thing I can't get over, and I don't understand why. Well, some people do make a big deal of it. That's such a big deal to me, because look, I hate to say this, that's worse than abortion.
Yeah.
That was the number one thing.
It is.
And it's funny, because I think it was last week, you talked about how God compares the worshiping of false idols to prostitution and whoring, and I saw some of those passages.
He always calls it playing the harlot in the Old Testament.
Yeah, I saw that a couple times when I was looking up other verses today, and but this is this is cheating on God. This is the number one thing, and if you can't get that right, you're not going to get anything else right. And somehow we got that wrong. It's insane. Oh well, I think I'm done talking about everything.
Okay, so we've done the Vigano thing.
Except for
so what about other current events?
All right, we've got it's kind of a long list here, but they're not. I'll try to go through them kind of quickly.
Yeah, because we're coming up on 2 hours.
What happened? There it goes. So, U.S. Secretary State. Let me start that again. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says that the Biden administration is working with Congress to provide $300 million to aid to Afghanistan as we're withdrawing our troops. I guess, we're taking out the troops. the locals are like, wait a minute, hold on here. You wanted help. We gave you help. You promised to protect us from these terrible people. These who are right now, living in the mountains, waiting for you guys to leave. And you're telling us you're going to take the troops out so we have no more protection again. And you're promising to give us a bunch of money to help the situation. Doesn't that sound exactly like what we did in Vietnam?
Yep.
I mean, we went there and we got all these villagers to help us, promising that we would stay there to protect them. We could not defeat the North Vietnamese, we couldn't defeat the North Vietnamese, so we finally withdrew, but we said, okay, but we'll give you a bunch of money to protect yourselves with. That's what we did. That's what we're doing now.
Yep. That's it. I mean, there's going to be a lot of bloodshed in Afghanistan.
I'm not saying necessarily that we should stay in Afghanistan.
We maybe shouldn't have been there in the first place, but it's like
right.
You know, once you make a bed, you kind of have to lie in it for a time.
Yeah, or we could have just blown them up and then left. I mean, and say, all right, guys, rebuild it. I don't know, or we could just take Afghanistan and we could colonize.
Yeah,
that would be the. I mean, that's a bad word nowadays, but
no, but yeah, that's
we could have done that,
right?
But I know that a lot of people are going to die because
it's going to be disastrous.
It's a shame.
It's going to be disastrous.
It's going to be a shame. Let's see. Department of Justice will investigate whether Minneapolis Police Department engaged in a pattern or practice of unconstitutional, unlawful policing. All right.
Is this a new thing?
Whatever. I mean, if he's guilty, then it's not a pattern.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, he was doing what he was trained to do.
If it's a pattern, then he was trained to do it, and he's not guilty. But the jury said he's guilty. So, I mean, the jury found based on that he was not trained to do. You know, Derek Chauvin was not trained to act the way he acted, which means that it's not a pattern within the police force.
This isn't a pattern. Yeah.
At least not the police force themselves are guilty of.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
This is...
It's typical liberalism. I mean, contradictory without acknowledging the contradictions.
Yeah.
Kind of like, this is why Orwell, in 1984, made kind of a big deal over, that citizens had to be forced to learn to, they call it doublethink, to be able to believe
accept
two
reality.
Contradictory facts and believe both of them completely. And Orwell believed that. I mean, he kind of demonstrated in 1984 his belief that that was a key component of this sort of totalitarian statism. So you're seeing
We're
it now
in training
among
here.
the liberals. Yep, this is 1984 training ground. About 30 years late, but
okay. Listen to this headline, and then listen to the next headline. This struck me as funny.
Okay.
The United States hosts a 2-day leaders summit on climate and invites 40 world leaders to discuss the necessity of combating climate change and committing to reducing their nation's emissions. The whole thing is just, hey guys, let's waste some time.
Where do you...
But then...
Are they going to hold this in the woods over a campfire?
I guess so. No. Here's the funny part. Due to quarantine protocols, the conference is virtual. I don't know. The whole thing is...
That's so stupid.
These people... I don't know. Okay, so now everybody's saving on this gasoline, and I guess, but it's like, what? You're all going to get in front of your microphones and do what exactly? What are you doing? What do you think you're going to accomplish?
These things are such a waste of time.
Idiots. Oh, well. So there were demonstrations spread out throughout Columbus after that girl was shot by the police officer.
The girl that was getting ready to stab a guy?
Yeah, despite the fact that it clearly shows she needed to be shot, but we're still going to blame white
demonstrate.
Police officers for some reason.
The police officer... I'm sure the police officer made her stab the guy so that he could shoot her, or something like that.
Yeah.
That must be what the demonstrators are claiming.
Yeah. So the Senate votes 94-1 to pass the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act.
The COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act? What the heck is that? That sounds like
this is
nutburger idea.
This has to do with the anti-Asian crimes that are being committed, apparently.
The anti-Asian... Oh, you mean all the black people? I don't even know...
What does that do? So if
all the black people that are killing Asians, and this is going to address that?
What does that do? I never did understand. What if it's a anti-hate crime? I guess if you commit murder, okay, you beat someone up, you get, say, I don't know, 5 years. I don't even know what you get for beating someone up. So here's how
hate crimes work. If you beat somebody up, and you did it so that you could take his wallet and run, and you get, maybe 3 years. But if you did it because you hate him, then you get 10 years. That's how stupid the whole concept of a hate crime is like that. If you shoot a guy in the head, because, out of revenge because, maybe he, slept with your girlfriend or something like that, okay, then you get 20 years. But if you do it because you hated him, 50 years or something. I don't know. It's...
Oh, well. I mean, this is what we do. I don't...
Yeah, it's this
It seems like there's no escaping it. I
know. Everybody's like...
And the whole world's doing it. It's not like...
It's like this great big...
It's not like anyone's sitting this out.
And everybody wants to jump onto it.
The House of Representatives votes 216 to 208 to pass a bill that would make Washington, D.C. the 51st state.
Oh, man. Now that is a really stupid idea.
It narrowly passed the House, and now it's going to Senate. I sure hope it doesn't pass. I don't know. I mean, if they do that, then they've got a bigger majority in the Senate. It seems like a lot to go through.
But they couldn't do it. Congress can't just directly do it. I think it has to go to the states themselves. I think there has to be other state involvement.
I don't know. Well, it goes to the Senate, but I don't know after that. No, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question.
The thing is, they'll do whatever they have to do. After seeing the election, you're not going to tell me we're safe from anything after what they did. But you know what we can do? We can keep praying. Pray for our country. NASA Perseverance successfully synthesizes...
Right. The Congress can admit new states, so they don't need the states to ratify.
Yeah, because we've done it before. I mean, there were 48 for a long time, and then we got Hawaii and Alaska.
The problem is the Constitution explicitly sets aside Washington, D.C. as the seat of government.
I know. This is... I mean, I don't know why they didn't go after Puerto Rico instead of Washington,
they could have gotten their votes from Puerto Rico.
Oh, well. Anyway, we have successfully synthesized breathable oxygen on the surface of Mars.
Synthesized?
Now, I don't know what that means. Breathable oxygen.
Synthesized.
What is there on Mars that can be turned into breathable oxygen? Are they talking about taking something with you and using that to create oxygen? Or are they talking about taking what's there and changing it to make it oxygen? That's what
Because it could be like maybe oxygen is in the form of, like rocks or silicon dioxide or something like that.
But if it was...
but I'm thinking rocks or silicon dioxide.
Mars' atmosphere is 96% carbon dioxide, and they used something to separate the oxygen and carbon molecules. The carbon and carbon and oxygen atoms to make some carbon and some oxygen. That's what they did.
That's how they're doing it. They're separating it from carbon. Oh, for carbon dioxide. Okay.
Yeah. So
I guess gold is a catalyst for this.
Don't know. They're using something they're calling MOXIE, MOXIE.
Mm-hmm.
Can generate up to 10 grams of oxygen per hour. That's not very much. I'm sure we need more than that.
It looks to me, I mean, I'm reading a thing in space.com, and it looks to me like they shoot carbon dioxide at very high speeds against a gold foil, and mechanically it causes the two oxygen molecules to come close enough together that they end up binding and releasing the carbon atom to run off by itself. The two oxygen atoms turn into an oxygen molecule, and then the carbon atom goes away.
Considering that the atmosphere is so incredibly thin to begin with,
how much are they going to make? Yeah, be able to make from that.
How much could you? Yeah, I mean, you, to make enough to actually breathe, I don't know. Oh, but you could also, you know what? It's not just for breathing, but you can use that to for fuel. I mean, you know.
Oh, that's right, for combustion. But you know, if your starting point is carbon dioxide on Mars, why don't you just try to Why don't you try to find some plants that can grow in a thin atmosphere and start growing plants? They'll make your oxygen.
Yeah, that would probably do more than shooting molecules at gold.
I think gold is just one example to demonstrate the reaction.
Yeah. Okay.
But still, try to grow plants. Maybe there's some plants that don't mind that the atmosphere is so thin.
I am sure that is in the that's in the plans, and it.
Yeah, they've got to be thinking
awful cold
about
out
that.
there,
right?
But they would have to produce enough heat to keep the plant alive, and then it's awful far away from the sun.
Mm-hmm.
So to be able to get food from the sun is, I don't know. It's a tough thing. I'm sorry, I don't buy the whole thing with colonizing Mars. I don't buy it. I think it's good that we do all this stuff.
It would be with materials and supplies, including oxygen supplies and so forth, probably continuously transported from Earth, or
if we could find a way to get it from a meteor.
Maybe from some meteors between Mars and Jupiter, or maybe even from some of the outer, because planets like Jupiter and that kind of stuff, maybe they have enough, these gaseous planets, Jupiter and Saturn, maybe they have enough of stuff where you could meaningfully synthesize oxygen, and then what you can do is you can be bringing those to Mars, or bringing that to Mars.
Yeah. Or the moons around those planets.
Yeah.
But even then, the distance you're talking about, you're closer to Earth than you are to Mars.
I know, but you don't want to deplete Earth's oxygen. We gotta live
Saturn. Yeah. Stealing our oxygen. There was something else. Let's see. So SpaceX launches a couple astronauts, and it on the Crew Dragon spacecraft.
Okay.
And it successfully docks with the ISS.
Okay.
So SpaceX,
nice job, SpaceX.
has put some people in ISS,
into the
International Space Station, the one that's fallen apart while Russia built a new one.
Yeah, the Russians are going to build a new one that they're going to try to be the.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So they've done all the analysis from the Census Bureau. Let's see, there are 331 million people here in the country. Texas will gain 2 congressional seats, along with Colorado, Florida, Montana, North Carolina, and Oregon all gaining a seat. California, Illinois, Michigan, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia each lose a seat.
Okay. That's not a bad thing.
So people are moving out of the blue into the red. The problem is...
You idiots, don't come and make our red blue.
Yeah, they're doing that, though. They are.
That's the problem. And so now everybody's going to be... It's like, you know what? If Recognize that
you're moving out of there for a reason. Why are you bringing your crap here?
Don't bring your crap. Recognize that your crap is the reason that you're miserable. Don't bring your crap to us.
Yeah, become one of us. Do the what do you call it when you immigrate to a place? You become one of the people.
Right, assimilate.
I can't think of the word. Assimilate with us.
If you're going to move red, assimilate red.
Yeah. So, off the coast of California, in the Gulf of Santa Catalina, somebody found 27,000 barrels full of DDT, insecticide.
Wow.
I wish I could get a hold of that.
1,000 barrels. Boy, one barrel would help us, just keep the mosquitoes down.
Yeah, get rid of the bed bug problem.
Oh, does it kill bed bugs too?
It kills everything. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I remember when chloroform went off the market, and Dad went and bought like a bunch of gallons of it. All he could, I guess. Yeah. But every now and then, Mom would say, I saw a roach or I saw a water bug or something, and he would spray that, and then the next day there'd be dead bugs everywhere. Huh?
You don't mean chloroform.
Yeah, I know. It's not chloroform. I know. But it's just one of those other insecticides that have been... Yeah, I do. Chloroform.
Chloroform's the stuff that puts you to sleep with, right?
Yeah, but it's also an insecticide. I think.
I think you mean chlordane.
Chlordane. That's what I mean.
And I remember Dad having chlordane in the shed. And he would say, yeah, you can't get this stuff anymore.
Yeah, and the kids... Jason and Bobby, when they were kids, they saw somebody spraying their dog for fleas. So they got the chlordane out. They sprayed my dog with chlordane.
How long was he sick?
He was sick for like 2 days straight, just puking nonstop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor dog.
Poor dog.
Don't spray your dog with chloroform or chlordane.
Or chlordane, either one.
But DDTs work great.
You know what they should do? I mean, at the very least, distribute it to hotels. Under regulations.
Get rid of this bed bug problem.
Managers have it.
Yeah. This is weird. Federal investigators raided the home of Rudy Giuliani in connection to the that call he made to Ukraine.
So I guess claiming that he was trying to act as a liaison, a official liaison to Ukraine.
That's
or something.
I guess that's the That's what they're trying to claim. I think they just wanted to get even with Giuliani for all the work he did for Trump.
I think that's it. And what's ironic is that what they're charging him with is Biden is actually guilty of doing that very same thing in the days after the election, but before the inauguration.
Yeah.
He was reaching out to other countries and basically starting his presidential interactions with them before he was the president. Yeah. So that same crime, Biden's guilty of it, but they're going after a wash-up like Giuliani.
They're getting even.
Yep, that's all it is. It's
I don't know.
It's revenge prosecution.
It's a shame, and you got to kind of. Here's the thing: I would love to call this martyrdom, but this wasn't really on behalf of God. It was on behalf of Trump. So
yeah.
I mean, in some cases, you might be able to make that. You're looking out to try to make the country more God-loving, and so you're doing things to try to end evil in the country, like abortion. And so, if they're coming after you, you might get some merit out of this. But someone like Giuliani, I don't know. As far as I know, he's pro-abortion, isn't he?
I don't know. Yeah,
or at least he was. It was when he was mayor anyway. So it's kind of like, I don't know. You backed the wrong horse for now. I mean, maybe we'll make a comeback. We don't know. But right now, this is the consequence of that. Some people are going to suffer. That's all I got.
All right. Well, I got a few things. Okay. So a New Hampshire neighborhood, in a New Hampshire neighborhood, some people had a gender reveal celebration that was felt as far away as northern Massachusetts. I guess they used more than 80 pounds of explosive in this gender reveal. When the police showed up to the rock quarry where they were having it, they found a container with chalk and tannerite, something I'm not familiar with. It says it's an over-the-counter explosive target used for firearms practice and sold in kit form. What's a explosive target? It's
how much of it did they?
80 pounds.
80 pounds.
Do you know what tannerite is?
Big ass bomb.
Yeah.
No.
Is
it something? Is it in place of black powder or in place of gunpowder?
Neither. At least I don't
How do you
think it's
spell that?
No, because it says it's an over-the-counter explosive target used for firearms practice. So my thinking is when you hit it, it explodes, and so you know from a distance that you hit it or something like that. I that's the only thing I can think. So they were at a rock quarry where they decided that it'll be safe if we do it at a rock quarry because there's nothing to blow up except stones. And I guess miles away, people felt and heard it. I don't know.
Did they find the people?
The guy who actually did it turned himself in.
Yeah. Do you remember at the gorge? What did we see? It was like a tree with kind of what looked like a bomb that had been blown up.
Oh no! It wasn't a tree. It was a it was like a standpipe or something like that. It was like a metal pipe that had been like blown outwards. Like, what blew that up? I probably have a picture of that somewhere.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I do too.
It was kind of weird just because it was like randomly out in the middle of the woods too.
Yeah,
and it was clearly like buried in the ground, like set in the ground.
Yeah, it was like someone had buried this thing thinking we're going to set off this bomb, and the bomb went off, but instead of blowing out everything, it blew most of the stuff up.
Something like
and
that.
Kind of,
yeah.
It did. Hold on, I'm going to see if I know I've got a picture of it.
I've got a picture, but there's no way I'd be able to
this is
lay
weird.
my hands right out on it.
So we're hiking through Red River Gorge, which is a great place in Kentucky. Kind of like a mini Grand Canyon, only wooded. And we found this pipe sticking up out of the ground, and it was a really thick metal, but it looked like it had been blown up. So our thoughts are somebody wanted to make a bomb and test it maybe, and brought it out there in the middle of nowhere, which is it's Daniel Boone National Forest in Kentucky. Mm-hmm. And blew it up, and years later, there's this pipe sitting there still that people would pass by and say, "Huh, look at that! Somebody tried to blow something up."
Try to blow something up. I mean, it's weird because it's like where it's like blown up. It's like curled around like multiple times.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It's like what the heck happened?
Maybe it was successful. Maybe it was a very long pipe at one time, and I don't know. It's a weird little thing.
Yeah.
But we have a picture of it. We'll post it on the website. We were talking about that because of a gender
reveal, 80-pound bomb.
Gender reveal party.
With something
Giant
called tannerite.
But that reminded me of something else. Oh. Okay. We grew up making fires at campfires and stuff. Over the years, my dad has gotten older, and he makes these fires in the backyard. We live in the middle of a city, but he's trying to get rid of branches and stuff, so he makes these little fires in one of those
he does it in the
50-gallon drums.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he puts it in there, and I guess he's just gotten lazier and lazier to where it's like, instead of starting a fire and then building on it, he'll just throw a bunch of wood in there and take gasoline and just dump it on there and then light it, which is illegal.
He could at least use like regular charcoal lighter fluid instead. Yeah,
something. But he just, I'm sitting, I'm in the backyard doing some work once.
You hear a big thump?
No. I was in the house.
Oh, okay.
And I had just moved in here. And I feel this boom. I feel it more than hear it. To the point where I saw the window shake.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell was that? So I go running in the backyard, and Dad's standing there at his little barrel, and there's a radius of probably 20 feet around him, charred black and smoking.
He was standing
and he's just standing there. I'm like, Dad, what was that? What was what? I said, didn't you hear the boom? No, I said, Dad, you're standing in the middle of a bomb crater. How could you tell me you didn't hear the boom? About 5 minutes later, the cops show up.
Oh, my.
And the cops say, I'm just having a little fire to burn some twigs. And the cops trying to talk to him, but Dad's playing stupid,
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, 5 minutes after that, the fire department shows up.
Oh, gosh.
The fire officer, I don't know what you call him,
who
was there to...
Fire marshal, yeah.
To act. I happened to go to school with the guy during grade school, so we knew each other, and he let Dad off with a warning. He said, next time, if I come back and I see evidence of gasoline, and he points to the gas can, he said, I'm going to have to cite you. It was such a loud boom.
Oh, gosh.
And he played like he didn't even hear it or something.
Yeah.
But it's just so obvious what happened.
It's like, boom. It's like, whoops, I shouldn't have done that.
Shouldn't have poured quite so much gasoline in. I don't know what he was doing. I don't understand how he poured that much gasoline in.
Yeah. And why wouldn't you use lighter fluid? It's meant to burn away slowly enough to light stuff.
Yeah. Well, gasoline's cheap, and he just fills... I've seen him do it. He'll fill a cup with it, and then dump the cup on the fire, and then light a newspaper and throw that on. That's what he normally used to do.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how... I think
into...
maybe he would throw gasoline and then forget that he did and come back 5 minutes later and put more gasoline on it. I think maybe that's what happened. And kept throwing more and more. Because it was... I mean, it's like a bomb crater.
Why wasn't his hair singed and stuff, though?
I don't know. Because he's protected by God, I guess.
It's something.
I don't know how he hasn't gotten a ticket yet. Danny, he would... In the middle of the day, he would start one of them fires, and then he'd throw a tire on it. I would be driving... I'd be driving towards the house in the middle of the day, and I see this pillar of black smoke.
Oh, God.
You could see it from like 6 blocks away.
Yeah.
You could see it from the fire station, Cheviot Fire Station. I don't know how he didn't get a ticket yet. But that was the last straw, and the fire guy is like, look, if you do it again. He said somebody called, they were worried, they said they thought they heard a boom. Yeah, they did hear a boom.
The Cheviot is being targeted by terrorists now, I guess.
Yeah. Damn the terrorists.
Yeah.
Old Dan Engel and his I don't know, his war against civilization.
Something, yeah. All right. Well,
all right.
Next one, I've got a woman, a Canadian woman, Joy Chapman, singer from Surrey, British Columbia, has set the Guinness World Record for the lowest note ever sung by a female. She was able to reach a C-sharp note at 34.21 hertz. Now, I don't know if you're, familiar thinking about things in terms of hertz and that kind of stuff. Let me look up something real quick here.
D sharp what?
C sharp at 34.21 hertz. But just to give you an idea, if you think of a piano, a working piano, a properly tuned piano,
yeah,
the lowest note on a typical modern piano is 27.5 hertz. So just within a few
lower than the lowest. Really?
So within a few keys of that, the one she sang was 34 hertz. So just it's like let's see, the lowest note on a piano is an A.
Key on a piano.
No, it's not lower than it because she sang 34 hertz.
Oh, 34 is higher than
27.
Okay.
So
27. Almost as low as
almost as low.
Okay.
That note is an A. If you go one key up, that's a B. The next key up is a C, and then the little black key just up from that, that's the C sharp. She was able to sing that as a woman.
Now,
so, pretty impressive.
So a guy can do a really high voice using his falsettos. Is there a falsetto type of thing that happens that can make you low? No, there couldn't be.
No, because the falsetto is right harmonics.
That's like a doubling up of your. Okay.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
I don't know. Impressive.
Well, that's pretty cool.
I don't know whether it would be fun to listen to that, but it's impressive.
Can you imagine being married to someone with that low of a voice?
Oh yeah. Well, she doesn't have a low voice. She can also sing very high.
Not. Oh, does she?
Yeah.
Well, that's just amazing.
I mean, she sang high, and then she was saying that in her vocal classes, you have vocal trainers, and typically what they do during a warm up, they'll have you sing along with the piano through some voice exercises. Then they'll start at a certain point, and you'll sing an exercise, and then you'll go up a third maybe and sing it again, and then up a third and sing it again, and so forth, and you go up the scale, and then you do the same thing going down. But her trainers would never go down all the way. They would stop at a certain point, and sometimes they'd say, well, we're just going to stop here because you're kind of freaking me out.
Jeez. They've done studies, and a woman's voice is the how do I say this? The average woman's voice and the pitch that she speaks in is the pitch that men most commonly tune out.
No kidding. That's interesting.
It's just one of those things
that is weird.
That higher voices are easy to just not listen
ignore.
To. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's see. Third item. Couple in, I think it's probably in the UK somewhere. They bought a house sight unseen. I guess they didn't visit the house because of the pandemic. People do stupid stuff in the UK.
That is dumb.
But anyway, they were kind of surprised that when they finally got to this house, they looked at the outside, and then they went inside and looked at the inside, and things didn't quite seem to match up. Well, they discovered a hidden room.
A hidden room.
They saw a room from the outside, like a room from the outside with windows. Two first four rooms, one which converted to office, second which shown to have a pitched roof and a window. But then they're exploring it from the inside. They realized there was no access to the second room that they could see from the outside, and so they found it had been boarded up. It's got it's like some. They've got pictures. It was it's like filled with insulation, but there's windows and stuff. And somebody could have just turned it into a room. Maybe it's one of those that when they built the house, they didn't want to bother heating it properly or anything, so they just filled it with insulation and sealed it off. I don't know.
They may have trapped a demon in there.
Maybe they trapped it. You know what?
It's like that Twilight Zone,
or that one H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah, the Lovecraft
guy had
book.
the one with the tiny frog creature that was boarded up in the room.
The frog guy
and the guy
ended up eating people.
And the guy let it out because he didn't heed the warning to leave the door locked or something like that, or the door sealed.
These two yahoos let the devil out on Earth.
Well,
The
fortunately,
Antichrist.
it's on the other continent, not on ours.
Yeah.
Okay, last, we've got, there's a lot of things to be hit by in Daytona Beach, Florida. A woman was hit by a turtle that flew in through her windshield while she was driving.
What?
71-year-old woman riding with her daughter on Florida's Interstate 95 suffered a gashed forehead Wednesday when a turtle smashed through the windshield of their car, striking her. The Daytona Beach News Journal reports.
Wait a minute. She wasn't driving?
She was driving. Oh, she was riding. That's right. The daughter was probably driving.
Okay, but they were moving. The car was moving.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a turtle flew through the windshield. My guess is that the turtle was kicked up by another car.
Yeah, maybe a big old truck hit it
and flipped it into the air.
Did they say?
Turtle like you're crossing got knocked in the air. I'm looking. It was released back. They've got a picture of it. It looks bigger than a baseball.
Well, okay.
It's got a picture of it.
Giant, like a sea turtle or anything.
No, not like one of those. More like the turtles we would find when we were kids.
Is it like a box turtle?
Yeah, like a box turtle.
See, when you first said it, for some reason, I'm picturing like a giant sea turtle, Somehow got airborne.
Yeah. No, there's a little box turtle, hard shell and everything, and just crashed into the windshield.
That could hurt someone.
The woman had a big gash
Last week it was the deer.
That's right.
Oh, jeez. It was the deer flew through a window last year.
I forgot about that.
Now turtles.
We've got deer, now turtles. We'll have to find out. Yeah, I'll have to search for flying animals that crash through your windshields. That's right. Sharknado's next, everybody.
Do you remember a book when we were kids and there was a page on it that talked about fish falling from the sky? It was a book about weird events or something like that.
Oh.
And apparently...
I remember a book about that had, weird things like that. They were all purportedly true. I mean, you could go and actually look them up.
Yeah.
I forget what it was called. I think it was called Triviatum.
It had some... I used to, read
and it did have a story about that.
I do remember that book over and over again.
Yeah.
And it had some funky pictures and stuff. I remember one of the pictures of a tank shooting donuts out of the barrel and soldiers catching the donuts and eating them. I don't know what that was about. But I also remember one of the stories was that an area with fish eggs in it had dried up and evaporated, and wind blew the eggs into the air, and somehow they got into the clouds and were up in the moisture for a long time, and then when it rained fish.
Okay. Yeah.
They said that's really happened. But I don't know. I remember that book from when I was a kid, and I remember reading that and thinking, oh, okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, me too. I'm trying to find that book on Amazon.
What'd you call it?
I thought it was like Triviatum or Triviata. And I'm seeing this thing called Triviata, a compendium of useless information. You know what? That's it. That is the book. Because they've got a page view inside, and they've got the one where the guy's being pulled out of the little fishing boat. Yeah,
I remember that one.
If you were to look at this picture, you would immediately recognize it as, oh yeah, that was in there. But so the book is called Triviata.
Yeah, and there's with the
Timothy
picture
Fullerton.
That was hung upside down.
Yeah, a compendium of useless information. You know what? I'm going to have to get myself a copy of that book now. Now that you brought that back up.
Yeah, I need to get it now.
So
I read that book so many times.
Me too. I used to carry it around at school with me in grade school. What?
I wonder if you can get it on Amazon. Yeah, you can get it.
Yeah, you can get it on Amazon.
I will.
But where is it? Why don't we have it anymore?
I don't know. We did not have the cover. I know that.
No, we didn't. I remember it just being a red book.
It was a red book.
And maybe it was in the barn.
It's only got one rating.
When that burned.
Yeah, probably. It's only got one rating on Amazon.
Really?
It's only a 3-star. I'm going to buy it, and I'm going to give it a 5-star rating.
See, it's on Amazon.
I don't know why. I love that book.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? I used to have another book called Strangely Enough. But it was a book that was kind of along the same lines, except all geared towards like the freakiness and the little more rumorish than necessarily what you could pin down in the newspapers and stuff like that. But what I remember is that this book had the Strangely Enough book contained a story of somebody who predicted an earthquake, and then the earthquake happened, and like the only survivors in a certain area were a couple of jailbirds. The Triviata book had the story about the earthquake and the jailbirds surviving it, but they didn't have the element of the prediction thing. It was just weird that the only people that survived this were the two jailbirds. And I remember noticing, I remember reading the one that, this seems familiar. And I went back to the Triviata book and found it. And it's like, yeah, there it is. And the two stories were actually talking about the same event.
When was this?
I was a kid. Oh, gosh, the thing was like back in the 50s, I think, the earthquake, something like that.
I mean,
maybe even earlier than that. It might have been 20s or something.
I mean, Tecumseh predicted an earthquake.
Maybe that was... Maybe it was. Maybe it was even older than that.
Or that, like, people all over the country felt it. They say the Mississippi changed direction
because
for
of
a
it?
short time.
Well, I can't find the quick linked reference to it on Google, but if one of us gets that book, which I'm probably going to see if I can get it, then we'll be able to look it up there and figure it out.
All right. We're almost 3 hours.
How did we get on that? From the flying turtles.
Know.
Okay.
Flying turtles.
Well, that was my last nonsense news. No, so that's
okay. All right. Well, folks, think about what we said, and as always,
circle the beads. Pray for our country. Pray for our world. Pray for our church. And you know what? If you want,
pray for the Pope.
I'm not saying that this is okay as Christians, but you know what? If you want Joe Biden to, kick the bucket, pray for his conversion. If he truly converted, he wouldn't last another month.
That would be better, because kicking the bucket wouldn't help us any, because
you'd have Kamala Harris.
It's not like our leadership would change.
No, I'm not. Yeah, and that's what I say. It's not okay to wish for that anyway, and it wouldn't help our country, but. It was just kind of because I do pray for his conversion every day, and it's like,
it would help.
Am I praying?
Converted.
Am I praying for his death sentence by doing that? It just kind of occurred to me out of the blue that
Yeah.
So anyway,
well, because they would kill him.
Yeah,
but
nonetheless, pray for our country.
Pray, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.